I am not hearing anything. It's very muted.
Doing this
Go
right?
Do this, go do this, do this. Okay, now mic on. Good, you're
Okay, the mic's on.
there.
Mic is
you're
on. Here, now
Okay.
we're good. Now we're good. Okay, I'm going to call the April meeting of the Butte County Local Agency Commission to order and ask the clerk to kindly call a roll.
Commissioner Boland,
Here.
Commissioner Connolly, Commissioner Kimball,
Here,
Here?
Commissioner
Present.
Commissioner Sharman, Commissioner Shepherd, Beth,
here.
Here.
Okay, we have a couple of items that are outside the normal. Steve, if you would take care of 1.2 for us here.
I'd be happy to, sir. Good morning, commissioners. Before I take this item, I just want to officially welcome Mr. Brown back to our meeting as our legal counsel. He's not in person, but he's here on the video. Welcome back, Scott.
Thank you.
This item is a resolution of appreciation upon the retirement of Joyce Dover, a day she has been looking forward to for some time now. I'm going to read the resolution into the record, if that's all right, Mr. Chair, and then I'll have just a few comments just to embarrass Joy. So I will read this. Whereas Joyce Dover, Commission Clerk of the Butte Local Agency Formation Commission, has retired effective April 29th, 22. We're getting a little ahead of ourselves. Whereas Joyce started her career with the County of Butte as an analyst with Child Protective Services in 1977 and subsequently joined the commission's team as the commission's clerk on July 14th, 2007. Whereas Joy has served the commission for 15 years and has been the only clerk this commission has had since independence in 2008. And one of the few clerks we've had in our entirety. Whereas Joy has diligently and ethically worked in the best interest of the citizens of Butte County, earning the respect and confidence of her colleagues from many agencies, peers, and the commissioners she has served throughout the years. Whereas Joy has served the commission with professionalism and integrity while discharging her duties with the highest level of competence and objectivity. Whereas Joy was instrumental in the commission's transition and reinvention as an independent agency in 2008 and worked diligently towards enhancing the positive public image of the organization through responsive and professional customer service. Whereas Joy has consistently brought to the commission a sense of responsibility to accurately and efficiently document and record all actions before the commission. And now therefore be it resolved that the Butte Local Agency Formation Commission hereby recognizes and expresses its deep appreciation for the services of Joy Stover to the commission, fellow staff, and the public we all serve, and the commission wishes her well upon retirement. Further, that this resolution be included in the minutes of the LAFCO meeting and that the copy of the said resolution be delivered to Joy as a testimonial of the sentiments of the commission, passed and adopted this 7th day of April. On a personal note, we all work with people for a long time, and you end up becoming almost like family with your staff. You spend more time with them than you do with your family sometimes. We have, with Joy, I could say we've lived through births, deaths, fires, and plenty of other tragedies in our own personal lives, which just builds the camaraderie of the team. And on an interesting note, I just realized it this morning coming to work that my son is 14 years old. And when he was born, Joy made him a quilt as a baby. And she has now finished her term here, but has been here as long as I've had my son. So Joy, thank you for your service to us.
You're welcome.
I, as chairman, have signed the resolution and I'm happy to do so. On a personal note, it did not emphasize, Joy, as much as I appreciate your patience.
Thank you.
And you have been very patient over the years and it's been very, very much appreciated. And on 1.3.
1.3 and an interesting twist. So we say farewell to Joy and we say welcome to Crystal Bradford. Crystal is our new commission clerk. She started this week, in fact, Monday. This is her first official commission meeting. She came to us from the assessor's office. So we are very thankful that we will get that expertise now in terms of our access to things, all things assessor. So I will welcome Crystal. Thank you for joining our team.
Okay, moving forward on our consent agenda, we have two items. We have the minutes and also the renewing resolution. If there's no other reason to do so, we'll consider both of those items together. Does anybody have any questions or additions? If not, kindly call the roll on the consent agenda.
I'd move to approve the consent agenda.
I'll second that.
Commissioner Boland,
Aye.
Commissioner Lucero,
Aye.
Commissioner Kimmelshoe,
Aye.
Chair Leverance,
Aye.
Commissioner McGrahan.
Abstain on the minutes, but aye on the resolution.
Thank you. Commissioner Bradley
Aye.
and Commissioner Johnson.
Abstain on the minutes, but on the resolution is aye also.
Thank you.
Okay, moving forward, the first item on our notice public hearings is section 3.1, which is an annexation involving the city of Chico. And Shannon, you've been handling this, so I will turn that over to you.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, commissioners. So this is another one of these annexations for the city of Chico that's sort of been a long time coming. This is an area on the west side of the city of Chico in the Glenwood Avenue area. It consists of 75 parcels and is 43 acres in size. The proposal comes to us from the city of Chico and does conform to the island annexation provisions as the site is bound by city jurisdiction on more than 50% of its boundary. The development potential in the area is limited as it's mostly developed with single family homes, some multifamily uses like apartments and a mobile home park. It does have some light commercial uses. And the pre-zoning for the area is generally consistent with what's developed there. So I don't imagine much will change upon annexation. Some of the homes in the area are connected to the city's sewer system through and extension agreements that this commission approved over time. I think there's maybe 4 or 6 houses that are connected to the sewer line. Sewer is not available in all areas, so many of the homes will remain on their existing septic systems. Some homes are served by wells, as Cal Water is not available in all the areas either. A portion of the area is overlaid by CSA 36, which is Glenhaven Lighting. Light poles, Glenhaven Lighting funds basically the PG&E bill for pole mounted light fixtures. As a part of this annexation, CSA 36 would be dissolved as the city of Chico will take on lighting services, or essentially paying the PG&E bill for that area. The area would also be removed from CSA 164, which is Butte County Animal Control, and from the Resource Conservation District, as those areas, or as that district only serves unincorporated areas. So today we're asking that this commission find that no subsequent environmental review is needed, as the project is consistent with the EIR adopted for the city of Chico, general plan, and adopt the resolution 09-2021-22, which would annex the area and dissolve CSA 36. And find that the proposal conforms to the criteria of island annexations and waive protest proceedings pursuant to that government code section. So I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Any questions from any of the commissioners?
I have one question.
Okay.
Your staff report doesn't reflect this, but did LAFCO staff receive any commentary on this notice hearing at all?
I believe you received one.
We received one call And prior to this, when we sent out a solicitation notice with the city of Chico, this was months ago, we got a total of 6 responses back. None of them were terribly disastrous, just questions more or less.
Mhm.
Thank you.
Is there a drainage district involved with this, or does the drains go into the city of Chico, or how does the drainage in this area handled?
It might be, do you think, is it part of the?
So drainage is handled mostly, mind you, this is a lot of territory that was improved by the county over time. These were not city subdivisions, but most of that drainage is on site or it's roadside drainage.
Mhm.
There's no formalized drainage system in a good part of this area. Most of it, because again, it was built most of it was built in the unincorporated area years ago.
So where does the water end up? I mean, maybe that's a stupid question, but you know, when we get rains and it goes down the drains through the gutters and, because this is curb and sidewalk, right? This whole
No.
area, it's not curb and sidewalk,
Mm-mm.
okay.
In the ditches?
Got to go southwest.
Yeah,
Yep,
It's in Delindo Channel, I suspect.
yeah.
probably.
It eventually is a surface flow
Mhm.
towards whichever body of water is closest, to put it bluntly.
I don't know that this
So there-
particular area has flooding issues in this specific neighborhood, but it's not part of any improved drainage district.
Okay, so this was, okay, that answers the
Yeah,
question.
I know that that area was developed, the drop inlets were put in and went to the southwest, and I think there was an existing ditch or drain system that the county maintained. But it all towards the Feather River, or
Okay.
excuse me, the Sacramento River.
I know Supervisor Lucero and I both know that some of these subdivisions done in the county, and don't want to say anything bad about the county, but they have drainage issues.
Huh.
And so I'm just wanting to make sure that this area doesn't necessarily flood, that it doesn't have a history of flooding. Is that correct?
Not that we're aware of. I've personally have lived in the area and never experienced
Okay.
flooding when I was there.
All right.
I do have,
Thank you.
I have another question. When something like this happens and the domestic water service is mixed like that,
Mhm.
and then it gets annexed into the
Mhm.
city, how does that work? You know, as wells fail,
Mhm.
are they compelled to hook up to service, or how does that work?
I did make contact with Cal Water. They do not currently have infrastructure in like specifically on Glenhaven Drive. And in contact with Cal Water, they, just like anybody else in the city who doesn't have access, they would have to request that Cal Water come in and put the infrastructure. And I would imagine the cost is shared amongst the neighbors, but Cal Water will not proactively go in and put infrastructure in this area just because they've been annexed to the city. It would be between the residents and Cal Water to figure out how to get domestic water out
When
there.
this area was developed, Cal Water was involved, so most of these properties are already serviced by Cal Water.
Well, I mean, that used to be in my district, so I know there's quite a few on wells out there.
Yeah, I did specifically check with Cal Water because there's sort of a gap in the map, the Cal Water service area. So I double checked with them and I said, do you really not serve this area? I was kind of surprised to learn that they
Yeah.
didn't. And they said, yes, we do not have infrastructure serving sort of the center of this annexation territory. And they said, if the residents want to get connected, they would have to reach out to Cal Water and start a relationship with them to get the infrastructure there.
And then just out of curiosity, I was at a water conference this weekend and they're projecting in the Central Valley in Selma, 5,000 domestic wells are going to go dry this summer.
Wow.
And so there's an organization called, the acronym is SHE, I think it's Self-Help Enterprises. And they are helping residents with wells that go dry. So I'm just curious, like, when this is kind of a mixture of, okay, it's been county forever, you have
Mhm.
all this island of well owners, that are now going to be part of the city. I don't think a lot of people know how that works.
Sure. And I think a lot of people have the misconception that the city provides the water,
Right.
and they just don't. And so it doesn't matter if they're in the city, outside of the city. It just is a matter of establishing a relationship with Cal Water.
The city and the county have the same rules. If your well fails and you don't qualify for a spot as far as an area for well, and the Cal water is available, you got to hook up to Cal water.
Mhm.
Yeah, and then also with the governor's new executive order and number 9, if, and I don't know if this applies to anything in this area. I don't know if there's ag wells in this
I
area.
would imagine no.
No, okay, because I know some of the homes are ag-ish, you know. out there.
Sure, they probably were at one time
Yeah,
many
and-
years ago.
Yeah, because they
Yeah.
have some orchards left and things like
Yeah.
that. But this executive order, basically it's in limbo now as to if you have an ag well and you have to drop your pump or you have to dig deeper, there is a moratorium on that.
Oh, well,
So I'm just curious how this is all going to play out, you know,
Sure.
in these weird mixed areas.
yeah.
Okay. Any other questions of the commissioners of the staff? If not, this is a public hearing. Is there anyone who wishes to be heard on this item? Seeing none, we'll close the public portion. I'll entertain a motion to adopt the acts of the staff and the resolution.
Move to approve?
Second.
And a motion and a second. Any discussion on the motion?
Just brief discussion. I realize we have a motion on the floor, but I think you brought up a pertinent issue, Deborah, and I know we don't have any jurisdiction over that issue, but I'm wondering if it'd be prudent for our staff to communicate that concern to the city as well as Cal Water, just make that known. And particularly this organization you referred to. I hadn't heard of that one. but-
Yeah, they're mostly in the Central Valley, but they are, we do have a similar program through the county with North Valley Community Foundation, which has been helping over in Glenn County. They've been
Okay.
helping with tanks and water delivery. The problem that I'm concerned about is if 5,000 wells go dry in the Central Valley, getting tanks up here is going to be near impossible with the
Sure.
supply chain. So I feel like we need to be ahead of it and letting people know you need to be calling your well driller now,
Mhm.
because there's already a 3-month, 4-month wait here. In the Central Valley, it's like 9 months.
Well, part
So-
of the process too is that when the city annexes this area, they're certifying that they can provide the full range of service. And police, fire, public works, and public safety and sewer. And they give lip service to the water issue because Cal Water has been providing the water. And so we really don't have any jurisdiction one way or the other. We have to make a finding, in fact, and we are making a finding that they're providing the service. But they're not. There's Cal Water is providing.
Well, I mean, and if they're on a domestic well, that's another twist in it. So you still have this mixture of kind of county, city stuff going on, even though it's within the city now.
Yeah, so I would imagine future residents, if they did have problems with their wells, rather than going to the county
Mhm.
and saying, what can I do? The city needs to be up to date on what sort of programs that they can offer their constituents or their citizens as far as wells going dry.
Do we know how many wells, domestic wells there are in the city of Chico?
No,
Have you?
there is Cal Water coverage map pretty much fills in most of the city of Chico.
Mhm.
But that doesn't necessarily mean that every single person is connected. But I would imagine Cal Water is available to
Cal Water,
most
I'm
of Chico.
sure, I know extends beyond the sphere of influence of the city of Chico and
Sure.
spots.
Mhm.
Yeah.
If I might add, and to build on your comments, Mr. McGree and Ms. Lucero, is that where LAFCO plays the role in this more than looking at this specific issue or trying to help anybody with a well get services. You see comments from your staff, and you have for years, where, especially when it comes to county projects, that we're pretty hard on municipal services and county developing properties that are outside of those areas. So Where I think the LAFCO role is, and this project is a good example of it, is we need to annex as much of those areas into those cities, and new development that occurs should occur within the spheres of those cities so that we don't end up with the situation continuing as you described. And again, not to pick on the county, but over the years, they developed a lot of property outside of service areas that probably should have been looked at differently. But that doesn't matter. We're here now, but moving forward, and we have comments on a project coming up later in the agenda which is a good example of us trying to tell the county planners as they go through the processes. You have to be really cognizant of these services. What looks like will work today may not work in 10 or 20 years, and look at the problems we already have. That's a tough sell sometimes, as you well know, politically as well as from a planning perspective. But that's where I think LAFCO plays our biggest role, is trying to control growth and keep it within the 5 cities so that we don't avoid those problems in the future, because those Cal water wells are very, very deep.
Yeah.
Those folks Cal water fields aren't going to lose water.
Yeah, although I will say that Cal Water was a sponsor of this conference. And, we have one large well offline because of contaminant issues here in Chico. Well, here, not in Oroville, but in Chico. I think there is actually some contamination also here in Oroville. And they mentioned the 5 areas in California, and they mentioned Chico. So that's an issue also that we're just starting to deal with, and that is the contaminants, the PFAS, and some of the emerging contaminants, as they're calling them. So I'm just wanting this body to be aware. I realize you're limited in scope, but I completely agree with your comments about developing outside of city jurisdictions.
Okay,
Excuse me, Mr.
no,
Chairman,
no,
before we vote on the motion, I just one little query, if you don't mind, Commissioner. Staff, do you know whether or not the city of Chico staff knows how many properties are in this area on domestic wells? Do they track that at all?
No, they would not.
Okay, so do we have the ability as an approving body for annexations in this type of circumstance? I don't call it what you will, a condition or whatever, just tell the
make it a
city.
policy, make it a policy.
Make it a
that we have-
policy that the city of Chico must inform all the current
Sure.
residents that if and when if you're on a well, if your well is a failed
Mhm.
system, you are obligated to be on Cal's.
I think as a matter of due process, the policy should apply to all cities in the county.
Mhm.
I'm just wondering if we can make that a policy someday. I realize it's not. on
I
the
don't
agenda.
want Chico to feel like they're being picked on.
Mr. Green, what I would suggest is we could prepare a draft letter that would go to all 5 cities. We'll bring it here to the commission first so you all can read it before we send it out. But we can bring that to a future agenda item. That way you can address that specifically.
If the commission
I
concurs.
think it's a
No,
great
that's a
idea,
legitimate thing.
because it's going to become more and more apparent as we go through this extended drought.
We just recently learned of higher nitrates in Biggs as well anyhow, it's a long story, but we'll readdress this at a future item.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay, anything else on this item? Otherwise, I'll ask the clerk to kindly call the roll.
Commissioner Boland,
Aye.
Commissioner Lucero,
Aye.
Commissioner Kimmelshoe,
Aye.
Chair Leverance,
Aye.
Commissioner McGreehan,
Aye.
Commissioner Bradley, Commissioner Johnson.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, moving on to 3.2, which is the budget. The budget committee met, as the staff report indicates, and voted to approval, subject obviously to the final vote here. Is the commission have any members of the commission that weren't at the budget meeting have any questions of the staff or the members of the committee about the budget? Seeing no huge groundswell of interest, I'll entertain a motion to approve.
Excuse me, Mr. Chair, if I may speak a little. The staff report doesn't mention what I would call the elephant in the living room, which is inflation. This year, the last 12 months, inflation has been 7.4%. And it's the general consensus of economists is that it's going to go higher. This budget does not reflect, as far as I can tell, other than 4% increases for staff, any reflection of the fact that effectively the purchasing power of the budget is dropping by 7.5%. I certainly would not want to endure a 7.5% cut, which is effectively what would happen if my compensation is not increased to meet inflation. I think that's the same is true of every other expense item in the budget. If the commission does not address this issue, it will get increasingly more serious, because then at some point you'll have to play catch up when the purchasing power has dropped 10-15%. So I've talked about this with all my other LAFCOs, that I strongly urge you to consider the effect of inflation on your budget and make appropriate adjustments so that you don't end up having to suddenly increase the budget 25% in 2 years because you didn't keep up with inflation.
Well, with all due respect, we have a $50,000 combination of reserve, which we can call upon for this year, for the fiscal year. And we take a hard look at the budget every year. I'm not sure that we need to build in anything that for this fiscal year, even though what you say is correct.
Well, I mean, that's your choice, of course. You're effectively reducing your reserves in doing so. And then at some
We
point,
have a long history of never having to use that reserve, and even with very high budget in past years, 10, 15 years ago, we were still able to keep everything within the budget with very high escalation and costs going back to in the early 80s. I'm just, I appreciate what you're saying. I just don't, I'm not sure that we need to adjust this budget other than be mindful that for next year, we may very well have to increase the budget and build in some of the things you're talking about.
yes, well, I would personally ask that you increase my compensation to meet inflation, if nothing else. Because
This
I
year
don't
or
really
next-
want to have a 7.5% cut
Are you talking about this year or next year?
for this next year. It's all we can control here is next year.
Well, the budget we're approving is for this next fiscal year.
Yeah.
So the indication was at the budget meeting that this was an acceptable amount. Now you're telling us it's not.
Well, I'm saying that no one asked me.
Okay, no, I appreciate that. And as it relates to you, I'm prepared to accept a motion to increase your compensation. How much are you suggesting?
I'm suggesting that it increase with the experienced inflation, which is 7.4% for the last 12 months.
Is that something we can do if it was not agendized at this meeting? Mr.
Part of the
Brown?
budget.
Yes, you're.
Oh, yeah,
free to
no,
do
we
so.
have authority
Okay.
to modify or change the budget. The budget hasn't been totally finalized.
If I could inject so the line items in the budget are all reflective of what we expect those costs to be at the end and through the coming fiscal year. So we believe that we have accounted for increases that we expect to see. With respect to the 7.5% increase, staff certainly understands that, and we considered it, and we opted to present and recommend to the budget subcommittee a 4% cost of living adjustment to address that. We recognize that it's 7.5. We also recognize that our member agencies also have budgetary issues and that we don't want to raise our apportionments greatly any given year beyond what we think is absolutely necessary. So this given year, we're going to have our budget increase about 12%, including that 4% cost of living adjustment. We believe that's an acceptable number. And I think by the lack of comments we've received back from any of our public agencies who pay our revenues, we believe that is sufficient and people are satisfied with that number. So I don't disagree with Mr. Brown. And if we have offered staff through this budget a 4% cost of living adjustment. And I don't think it's inappropriate to offer Mr. Brown a 4% cost of living adjustment, but we did not offer 7.5, nor did the subcommittee
Well, I was
consider.
about to say, just because the last 6-7 months have been 7.5 doesn't indicate what the total inflation rate will be for the fiscal year. And I think the 4% that we use is a lot more close to what probably will happen.
May I ask a clarifying question? Does the $25,440 that he currently receive reflect a 4% increase?
It does not.
So that would need to be added to this.
Correct. So the motion, if you wanted to increase the line item for legal counsel, would be to ask us to increase that line item by what percentage you believe is appropriate. And then we will return in May with the final budget, which with that number being calculated into that final budget for adoption. So this is just a preliminary budget. The final budget is in May.
And the 4% would be consistent with what we did elsewhere.
Right. Yeah, I would move that we increase legal counsel's fee of $25,440 by 4% to reflect what we've done with the other employees of LAFCO.
Are you including, as long as we've got something to talk about, the motion to approve the balance of the budget to move forward?
Yeah, I don't know how that works.
Well, I mean, you've made an amendment. We'll vote on the amendment, but I just want to, we've kind of backed into it here. So I want to just procedurally make sure we're in good shape. Let's treat it as an amendment. We have an amendment made to adjust the payment to Scott Brown by 4% under the budget line item. Is there a second?
Second.
All right, any discussion on that?
Chair, I believe we need to open this to the public for comment.
Thank you. I was about to ask for that.
I'm sorry, I didn't pick up.
Public comment.
Public comment. We need public comment on this.
Open the
On the
agenda to the
amendment.
public.
Well, we haven't really, well, okay, I was going to say, we really haven't anything to, the public needs to look at what we're going to finally vote on. So yeah, if there's anyone in the audience who wishes to be heard on this amendment to the budget? Seeing none. Call a roll on that.
Mr. Chair, you asked for a question on the motion too. I have one question before we vote on the motion. May I? ask?
No, the only motion we have is just the increase to 4% for Scott.
Right, but we can have questions, right?
Yeah, at this point,
Right.
I limited it just to
Oh,
that.
you limited to that, but well.
Yeah, then
okay,
we'll come back to the full budget here. in a
But
minute.
indirectly related to that, if in the event that we pass that motion, then
Yeah, so,
subsequently
but
adopt.
we're amending the budget as submitted by the budget committee on this one item. So call a roll on that motion, which is to increase Scott Brown's compensation by 4%.
Commissioner Boland,
Aye.
Commissioner Lucero,
Aye.
Commissioner Kimmelshoe,
Aye.
Chair Leverance,
Aye.
Commissioner McGreehan,
Aye.
Commissioner Bradley, and Commissioner Johnson.
Aye.
Thank you.
Okay, now we have before us the budget as amended. Is there a motion to approve? Let me back up. Is there anyone in the audience who wishes to be heard about the proposed budget? Seeing none, now I will entertain a motion to approve the budget as amended.
Move to approve the budget as amended.
Second.
Okay, now any discussion further?
Yes, Mr. Chair, thank you. In the event that we pass this motion today, would it be a safe assumption that staff would monitor the inflationary situation over time and be prepared, if necessary, to come back during next fiscal year and not wait till the end of that fiscal year or even halfway, but just something that's going to apprise us of what's going on relative to this issue that was raised by legal counsel?
We can absolutely do that. We can come back in 6 months with where we're at. Does that work?
Mhm.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay.
Any other discussions or questions or comments? If not, call the roll, please.
Commissioner Bolin,
Aye.
Commissioner Lucero,
Aye.
Commissioner Kimmelshoe,
Aye.
Chair Leverance,
Aye.
Commissioner McGrehan.
Aye.
Commissioner Bradley. Commissioner Johnson.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, the next item we have is section 3.3, which is the CAL FIRE extension of service to the city of Oroville. And Shannon, I think that you're the one that drew the short straw on this also.
Yes, let me get some screens going here for you. Okay, so I did prepare a slideshow today because this is something new to this commission
And to the state.
and what?
And to the state.
Yes. So here, let's try to get this out of the. Okay. So what we're looking at today is a request from CAL FIRE or the California Department of Forestry and Fire Protection to extend their fire services into a public agency's jurisdiction, which would be the city of Oroville. So like I said, this is something new to this commission. This code section of Cortese Knox was passed in 2015 and modifies section 56133, which is the typical extension of services that we see at this commission for sewer extensions for city of Oroville and things, or city of Chico and things like that. So as far as we know, since 2015, this code section has not been utilized, and you would be the first commission in California to be approving a extension of services by contract under this code section. So that's been fun. So talk about a little background of how we got here. The city of Oroville receives its fire protection services by 3 service providers. CAL FIRE, or the California Department of Forestry and Fire Protection, is responsible for the state responsibility areas. And through a previously signed contract from back in the 1930s, they provide fire service to unincorporated areas of Butte County. The City of Oroville Fire Department is responsible for the local responsibility areas, which is all areas within the city's jurisdictional boundaries. And then we have El Medeo Fire Protection District, which is the county's only fire protection district whose jurisdiction is in South Oroville and is has some of the city of Oroville and some unincorporated area within its boundary. So the city of Oroville's fire service model is guided by the general plan, as most things are, in the safety element. And that element identifies the goals and policies of the fire department, that the city, and its main goal is to maintain and enhance strategies to ensure adequate fire response travel time of 3 to 5 minutes to incidents and travel time of 10 minutes or less for additional resources within 90% of its call volume. In 2019, the OFD met this response time only 44% of the time. And a lot of that is due to the city's growth and its change. Back in 2006, when we did an MSR for the city, they were meeting this goal upwards of 90% of the time. So over that time, we've seen the city grow away from its central core. The city's fire department is located in the center of town, and most of the growth has occurred on the borders or the edges of the city. And there's a lot of obstacles in the way to get there. The Highway 70, the Feather River. So they are finding that they have an increased dependency on outside agencies to be the first to respond to many of their calls in these outside areas, which is CAL FIRE. So CAL FIRE was first to respond to areas of South Oroville, Thermalito, and obviously they're the east side of town. So the city council was prompted to change their service model, and they have they identified their goals, which was to enhance fire protection services to the city of Oroville, balance the reciprocation disparity with CAL FIRE, and satisfied response times found in the general plan. Three plausible options were considered, and that would be to continue its current service model, which would be no growth to department, no investment in new infrastructure or apparatus. Adopt and implement the Oroville Fire Department 5-year plan, which was a plan created by the department that would basically meet all of OFD's needs. And it included significant increase in funding to hire more staff, build a new fire station, purchase new fire trucks and all the apparatus that go along with that. And the third option would be to enter into the fire service contract with CAL FIRE, essentially transitioning all of their staff to a contract model with CAL FIRE. Oroville City Council chose the third option, to enter into the fire contract with CAL FIRE. So in preliminary meetings with Oroville staff, we basically opened up the code section as it was new to everybody. And luckily, this particular code section lays out very explicitly how this process is done, who can carry out the process, and the exact steps that we would follow. So the first step was to determine if this request fell under this code section. And there were two basic criteria, which would be that the fire contract transfers 25% of the area served to the contract, or changes the employment status of 25% or more of the employees. And obviously this contract would transfer 100% of OFD staff to the contract model. So the code section was triggered. The next step was to notify the unions. OFD and CAL FIRE are served by two, or what's the word? Covered by two different unions. So both of them were notified by CAL FIRE staff of OFD's intent to enter into the contract. Both union representatives did respond back with that they would not be objecting to the contract. And then comes the resolution of application, where the code section explicitly describes who can adopt the resolution of application and who it had to be signed by. In this particular case, the state agency is providing service. And so the resolution of application had to come from the state, signed by the director of the agency, and approved by the director of finance. And just to cover all of our bases, we encourage the Oroville City Council to hold a meeting basically requesting that CAL FIRE adopt this resolution. So City of Oroville held a public meeting and adopted a resolution requesting that CAL FIRE enter into the contract. So we did receive the application from CAL FIRE, initiated by the director and approved by the director of finance as was required. The application contained all of the requirements as set forth in the code, which included a plan for service, which identifies 10 criteria, including things like the ultimate cost of the contract, alternative models, the level of service expected and provided, and of course the financing model. And then along with the application came the independent fiscal analysis that was prepared. There were certain requirements that this had to meet, but basically it described a cost comparison with similar populations and geographic size. So if you saw that in the report, it does talk about the town of Paradise and some other towns of similar size and similar model. It's hard to, these contracts are basically written up on a as needed basis. So no two contracts are going to be the same. So it's kind of hard to compare each contract. The city of Oroville may not necessarily need all the things that the town of Paradise or the city of Biggs or the city of Gridley needs. So the contracts are all going to be different. So it does provide a financial or fiscal comparison for the towns in our area and around California. And then, of course, it provides the cost that's expected to be borne by the agency. So at this commission meeting, the code says that this commission shall not approve this request unless it has determined that the public agency providing the service has sufficient revenues to carry out the service. The service is provided by CAL FIRE, which is funded by the state's general fund, which I don't think we're worried about. $2.9 billion is budgeted for CAL FIRE for fiscal year 21-22. The proposal is consistent with the intent of 56134 and of Butte LAFCO policies. The proposal meets all the requirements as set forth in code section 56134. Butte LAFCO policies do not speak to this particular type of approval, but we did compare it to policies set forth for our usual surface extension agreements, and it does meet all of those policies. And that the affected territory to receive, the affected territory is expected to receive revenues sufficient with a reasonable reserve for 3 fiscal years to execute the contract. So essentially, Oroville Fire Department or City of Oroville will fund the contract through funds that would have typically been set aside in their budget for the Oroville Fire Department funding, which is funded through the general fund, sales tax, property tax, and Measure U tax. There will be significant savings to the Oroville, to the City of Oroville, because all employees would be transitioned to a contract status. So there'll be some initial payments in regards to CalPERS payouts and things like that. But over time, the City of Oroville will no longer have to fund, they won't be responsible for those payments, which will save them over time. So today's recommendation is to find that the extension of service request is exempt from CEQA guidelines pursuant to section 15301 and 15320, and adopt resolution 2021-22 authorizing the California Department of Forestry and Fire Protection to provide fire protection services within the incorporated areas of the City of Oroville and to any future annexed areas. So we do have representatives today from CAL FIRE, City of Oroville, and then we do have Chief Scholand who can speak to any questions as well.
Okay, before we proceed, is there any questions concerning the staff report from any of the commissioners?
I just had one
Sure.
on, you brought up the comparison with Paradise, and I noticed that they used 2016 data to figure that out. Is that?
I would imagine they grabbed pre-campfire data.
Yeah, 'cause-
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, okay, because it said there was 22,000 people, so they're just basing it on that, and they service Paradise as well.
Paradise, Biggs, Gridley, and unincorporated Butte
Okay.
County.
All right, thank you.
Mhm.
Any other questions? If not, we'll open it up for the public, and if there are people here, obviously come up and identify yourself.
Hello, my name is Chris Tins. I'm the interim fire chief for the City of Oroville. I'm just here to observe and answer any questions if you guys have any for me or city administrator.
Just a quick question. I noticed that there's a letter from the Fire Association in support of this action, and that appears to be across the board. Is that correct?
I can't comment on the union's letter. That I'm separate from the union.
Okay,
Sorry for the confusion there, but
all right. Any questions of the chief? Thank you. Anyone else who wishes to be heard?
Good morning, Commission. My name is Bill Legrone. I am the city administrator for the City of Oroville and the acting chief of police at this time. This item before you today was an attempt of the city of Oroville to harden our fire delivery service. We recognize that we had an issue where we had not grown our fire service for over 20 years, and we were not equally holding up our end of the deal. The county was significantly supplementing our fire services in the Thermalito area. The return rate of calls for service that we delivered into the county as compared to into the city was significantly disproportionate. And we do appreciate that from the county. And if the county wanted to pay for fire service, we'd certainly accept that too. But I don't think they're in a financial situation to do that either. So we also recognize that we have a financial responsibility also with unfunded liability as far as PERS and things like that come along with long-term effects on our budgets. So we looked at this holistically to see what is the best solution, not only for the city of Oroville, but for our firefighting partners and our neighbors. And the best solution that we came up with was that this was the thing that the city needed to do to harden that fire service and make it a better system for everyone. Unfortunately, the days of fiefdoms are coming to an end. I mean, regionalization is where we're going to have to move if we're going to survive. I mean, there's no necessity to have 6 PSAPs running all day long in a county this size. You could probably do it easily with 1. But instead we have it the way it is. So we recognize that change is necessary. We are not trying to be disrespectful to the history that exists with our fire department. We love our fire department. We love our firemen. It is the second oldest fire department in California. And I want to let everybody know that I don't believe for a minute that that's going to change. It is still the Oroville Fire Department. Our labor provider is merely CAL FIRE. So to me, nothing changes. We worked very hard to ensure that all of our employees were transferred over to CAL FIRE. And I'm very happy to report to this commission that they are all going to be in CAL FIRE service. No one's losing a job. Everyone's getting raises because of this. And the promotional opportunities for our men and women that serve us is much greater. I mean, it was very limited at the Oroville Fire Department just because of the size and the services that we could offer. So this is something that I see from the perspective of city staff, that this is a win-win all the way around. I know there are those that very much want to keep what we have and continue that and grow that and try to expand that. I respect that view and that opinion. But when it comes down to the finances and the best or highest level of service with the greatest depth of resource, I believe this is the best answer for the city of Oroville. So our staff is here to answer any questions that you may have. If you do not have any questions, I promise I won't stand here and snatch defeat from the jaws of victory.
Excuse me. I have absolute sympathy and understand the wisdom of what you're doing. What I'm concerned about from a LAFCO perspective is tangentially, you have part of your city and part of the county being non-served by the El Modelo Fire District, which is a separate issue, but really tangential to what's happening. I just want to underscore our concern, the LAFCO's concern, that we have a non-performing district collecting taxes and performing no service. And so we want to work as quickly as possible. And I know our staff are talking to you about dealing with that, because clearly that's a problem that needs to be solved.
Yes, sir. That is a financial problem for the city of Oroville. We're providing services, to a district that is collecting dollars to provide those services and not doing it. So we are tracking those costs, and at some point this is going to come to a head, and we may be back to this commission seeking the disillusionment of that district. If the district is not going to take the necessary steps to begin providing those services and write their own course, then unfortunately, I don't want to be contentious with anybody or confrontational, but we will move down that path if necessary with this commission.
Any other questions?
I just want to know what the oldest fire department in the state of California is.
I don't know. I don't, is it Sacramento? We'll go with Sacramento for the purposes of this meeting.
All right.
Thank you.
Anyone else who wishes to be heard? Thank you. Okay, it would be appropriate to entertain a motion to approve for discussion.
I would move approval of this resolution.
I second.
All right, anyone have any thoughts or discussion about the motion?
I think
Well,
it's
other
a-
than my concern about the Almadale Fire District, I mean, it makes perfect economic and public sense for this to happen.
Yeah, I was just looking at the numbers. And I believe if they had gone with the city of Oroville plan, it would have been up to $9 million a year or over 9 million compared to the 5 million, 5 plus change. So fiscally, it seems like the most prudent plan.
All right, let's call the roll then.
Commissioner Boland,
Aye.
Commissioner Lucero,
Aye.
Commissioner Kimball,
Aye.
Chair Leverance,
Aye.
Commissioner McGreehan,
Glad to say aye.
Commissioner Bradley, Commissioner Johnson.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay,
Well done.
we have nothing.
May I ask a question, Mr. Chairman, in regards to that? If I know that's maybe not protocol, but does LAFCO have the ability to dissolve an existing district
Yes.
without their permission?
Technically, yes.
Okay, thank you.
The vote rate is different than if somebody else, like the city of Oroville, requests it.
Okay.
We had no items removed from the consent agenda, so we will move on to 4.2, which is the island annexation agreement with the city of Chico. And Shannon, you're still up.
Still me, yeah. You get to hear me again. So this is the wrap up of an item we've been bringing to you for the last 20 years.
Close to 50 that I can think of.
Is that true?
So for the past year, LAFCO staff with Commissioner, with our chair, have met with the city of Chico and their city manager to finally make some progress on this island annexation agreement to tie up the 4 remaining islands that are located within the city's jurisdiction. We finally got to a place where the agreement was agreed upon by both our staff, and at our last meeting, you guys saw that draft agreement and gave that your blessing. The agreement went back to the city of Chico, and at their March 19th meeting, their city council unanimously agreed to provide authority to their city manager to enter into the contract. And so it sounds like this is finally coming to an end. I do want to make one correction before we move forward on this. I have requested in the staff report that you would adopt a resolution today. And then you may have seen that there was no resolution, and that's because you are simply voting today to provide authority to our chair to enter into the agreement that would mirror what the city of Chico did. I had originally assumed that they would adopt a resolution, and they did not. So today I'm asking that you would vote to provide authority to the commission chair to enter into the agreement that would become effective 2022, and you could anticipate the first annexation application to come to us in August of 2022.
Any questions of the staff?
I have a.
Go ahead.
I just wondered how that affects, if they're currently in the county and now they're going to be in the city, how that affects the elections.
They will be absorbed into their district. At the city council meeting, Councilmember Reynolds asked specifically if the numbers for these populations were considered in their district maps. They are not. They're not counted as population as their districts go. but they would be absorbed into the district where they lie. None of them constitute like a weird border or would make
It wouldn't
it
change
wouldn't
the
it wouldn't be
county.
unclear as to where the district boundaries lie. But they would just be absorbed into that
Yeah,
district.
it doesn't change the county.
No, I
It would
understand
impact
that.
the city.
City.
I'm talking about the city districts. you know,
The new
The new
districts.
districts.
Yeah.
And so I was just wondering how these people would be notified. Is that up to the city?
Notified of
What
The
district
clerk-
there?
The clerks, county clerk.
County clerk would,
upon, I would imagine, so after they get annexed into the city of Chico sends them sort of a welcoming package. It says, welcome to the city, and
Yeah, there's a whole.
here's the
process.
numbers you call for public works and things like that. And so I would imagine that since the districts are fairly new to them, that they would, or we could encourage them to
I would
include.
love to encourage them because I don't know that they'll be thinking about that. I'm not sure, but if,
Sure.
you know, if
Yeah.
Casey Reynolds brought it up, they probably are thinking about it, but I think
Yes.
it's important.
Yeah, definitely.
So I've got a question on how these islands were determined. I mean, some of them make a lot of sense. There are true islands.
Mhm.
I'm looking at the spot there off of Bidwell Avenue, West Sacramento in that area.
Mhm.
It seems like it stops.
Yes.
And why doesn't it go along Lindo Channel all the way to the end?
Because the area that we've identified as the island, a lot of it is currently served by city sewer. There's infrastructure in the ground that if a citizen goes to the city of Chico and says, I want to connect to the sewer line that's literally in front of my house, then they have to come to us for a sewer extension agreement. And so it's that area was sort of defined by what's the sewer that's already served. And we've encouraged the city to none of the areas are, they're not listed by priority for any reason, but we've encouraged them to consider areas that are already served by infrastructure first. And then that particular area was kind of like, where do you stop? Do you take in that entire, if we had taken in that entire neighborhood to the west, it would not have qualified as an island. And then it probably would have met a little more protests and have been a little more difficult to get. We wanted to make sure that the area that's served by sewer would be annexed because that makes most sense.
So what you're saying is the sewer line stops at that line.
Yeah, I don't believe anything west of that line is served by sewer currently.
So all big Chico Creek estates
They're
area,
on septic,
they're all on septic.
right?
There's,
Well, the
it's-
urban
it's a-
limit
there's a
line is
few
in
on
there,
sewer
too.
that were originally there, but the
Private
majority
lines,
of
I
it is
think.
private septic systems.
Yeah.
And are these the last of all the islands in Chico that
Yeah.
are
The big island.
the big islands?
Big
Okay.
Yes.
Yes, if I could speak to that real quick, Commissioner Kimmelshue, I haven't been around as long as Carl, but around a long time. And when I started with the city of Chico talking about this with their planner Cliff Sellers at the time, we had 42 islands in the city of Chico. It was total Swiss cheese. This is the final grouping of islands. I cannot be more proud of this commission and our effort. I know it took a lot of time, but we kept pushing and pushing and pushing the city. And we finally got through to their staff at the planning level that this made good sense. And once we got past the Chapman-Mulberry hurdle a few years back, things got a whole lot easier and the city got a lot more, came a lot more obvious to them that they needed to do this. So this is one of the better things. And Mr. Betts can tell you from his experience around the state with their LAFCOs, island annexations continue to be an annoyance all over the state, and others are struggling to no end to get these islands cleaned up. And so this program we went through over the last few years was extraordinary in that regard, that we're going to have success when we're done. And hopefully by the time I retire, we will have no more islands. And I don't mean just in city of Chico, but Gridley, Biggs, Paradise, we have in Oroville, we have done our part, and the city of Oroville did its part as well. So we have really pushed this over the last 5 or so years. And so this is a great accomplishment. And I also can't help but, I know Mr. Vieg is not here today. He's come up here and taken a lot of hits from us over the years, their city planner. He's not able to join us today, but he was instrumental in getting us forward as well. So this is another one of those win-wins, I think, for everybody.
So this is kind of, we're just starting to this process to move forward. This is not a final vote, obviously. Have the residents of those island areas been notified that this is going to happen? Or is
No.
that in the future?
Yes, so as these annexations come up every year, the city will follow their same protocol that they do when they are pursuing annexation. They'll send out the letter. It's a joint letter with Butte LAFCO, and they'll follow all the same procedures as they normally do. So each of these annexations will come to you for approval. It's just that this will be the agreement to do it on a timeline, and we won't let the city drag their feet any longer on getting them to us.
Okay. Do we need to make a motion?
Yes, you'll make a motion to provide authority to the chair.
I would like to make that motion.
I'll second that.
Okay, we have a motion to authorize the chair to sign the contract with the city of Chico. Any other discussion? Call the roll,
Is-
please.
Commissioner Boland,
Aye.
Commissioner Lucero,
Aye.
Commissioner Kimmelshoe.
Aye.
Chair Leverance,
Aye.
Commissioner McGrehan,
Aye.
Commissioner Bradley, Commissioner Johnson.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, moving forward, 4.3, which is an update on the Tuscan Water District.
Well, I am happy to say this is a very, very brief update, and we are not talking about substance today. The protest proceeding occurred on April 5th, so this just on Tuesday. And what that really means is that's the conclusion of the 21-day or the period for which people could submit. So we send out a notice. They have 21 days to provide a response back to us, up to and including walking into the meeting on the 5th, which concluded the period of comment. So we held that. We only had 2 individuals actually show up at the meeting itself, but we did receive in the mail, and along with those 2, a total of 120 protests back. So 120 parcels essentially protested this. That's out of 3,106 parcels. So from a percentage standpoint, if you look at it from total assessed land value, the opposition to this was 2.6% of the total ALV. And if you look at it from acres, it's even less. Out of the 99,266 total acres in the district, opposition was from 1,978, which is up 2% of the folks who protested the annexation. So having said that, if this was I'm off script here a little bit, but if this was an annexation to a city for say, this would automatically be passed right now. But because it's the formation of a district, it goes to an election. The only thing the protest proceeding would have ended, if it would have been over 50% in opposition, we would have terminated it then and there. But because it was less than 50%, it does go to an election. And now we will notify the Board of Supervisors that they need to redirect the county elections official then to conduct the election, which will be a mailed ballot election. Your staff has already met with this county elections official staff. That process is underway. So there will be a ballot that will get circulated hopefully sometime in the latter part of August of this year. And then that vote will take place, and it'll be a vote based on acreage. And then the outcome of that election will provide the final act on this play, if you will. So the election will ask the 3 questions that you already approved, which is, do you want to form it? Are you willing to pay the parcel assessment and pick 9 directors that you would like to be the first board of directors? That's all going to be on the ballot. So this process was just sort of to be very blunt about it, the code is very poor on this. Cortese Knox state law does not provide a lot of guidance when it comes to formations. So this process has to go to an election because no one ever took the time to go back and reevaluate how these things were done. So having said that, this is good news in the sense that this opposition was extraordinarily small, which causes staff to feel better about the fact that I think we provided a very thorough background and the commission made a sound decision based on facts. And I think these numbers kind of indicate that. And if they hold true through the election, you're probably looking at an 80% or greater approval rating at the election. So anyhow.
Can I ask a question?
Yes, ma'am.
What was the participation rate of all of the, parcels?
120 people
No,
protest.
no, no, I mean, in terms of percentage of all those that could protest in terms of all of the parcels. What you're saying is that everybody turned in something?
No, no, out of 3,106 letters, ballots, if you will, where protest forms were sent out, we received back 120 total.
Wait, you've got, okay, no, I'm not talking just about protests. I'm talking about the total participation rate, protests for and against.
I'm not
Oh,
sure.
I see what you're saying. It's only protests. So you would only get
Right.
protests back.
Right. I'm
Okay,
sorry.
so you,
There were over 3,000 parcels that could have protested.
Right,
but less
okay.
than,
I'm trying to, I just needed to understand that. And then you mentioned that it was based on assessed value, but the election is going to be based on acreage.
So the protest proceedings in Cortese Knox do not have, and for a formation, do not have an established number, whether it's assessed land value or acreage. Ordinarily, in every other function we do, it would be assessed land value. But because this is a formation of a water district and the water district has to be approved based on acres, we ran it for both columns. Essentially, we believe that it's the acres that is the legal component that matters, but we also did it based on ALV just as a contrast. So in both cases, it came back at 2 and 2.6%. So it demonstrated under both metrics, it performed accurately, but it would be acres, Ms. Lucero, because that's what the vote will be on, is acres.
Okay, and then of the 120 protests, does that mean that they opted out?
They said they did not support the formation of this district.
Can they opt out?
Not at this point, no. Their option to opt out would have been at the February meeting, and we had asked everybody who wanted to opt out. We had 2 parcels remove themselves, and that was the total that opted out at that time. Now, moving forward, they can always go to the district if it's formed, let's say by the end of the year, and they can ask the district to remove them, and that's up to.
Do they know that? Do they know how to do that?
no, they, the fellows that put the gang together testified to hear that once it was formed, anyone who wanted out, they would let them out. So.
I know, I'm just saying, it's just like everything else, you know, there's, this is a whole new thing. And you said yourself, you have never even done it. So you're expecting all these people that maybe don't even know they got a postcard to opt in or out. I'm wondering how we're communicating with people.
The same way we have always done for the last 27 years, I've done this, and in the same way that every other agency operates. I appreciate that some people just throw mail in the trash, but I don't think it's incumbent upon the agency to make sure that we handhold people, to make sure they open up those notices. I do know, I respect what you're saying. You know, frankly, folks who tend to not participate and say they didn't have the option somehow ignored all the various notices they received over time. And I don't think anybody in this county can honestly say that they didn't understand or hear about the Tuscan Water District at some point over the last year. But you're right. Some people are just not going to pay attention.
All right.
Okay, any other?
I think Supervisor Lucero brings up a good point. And when they're going to protest is when they see their tax bill. That's when they're going to protest,
Right.
because they're going to see that there's an assessment there, and then they're going to want to know what it's all about. So when they get that, do they still have an opportunity to opt out?
No,
No. Yes or no?
they, as a result of the election, no. We're moving forward with the
Right.
parcels as it's set by the
Mhm.
commission on approval. Once the district is formed, if it is formed, then the board of directors of the district then can entertain anybody's request to remove themselves detached from the district. And as Mr. Levers pointed out, the proponents are more than happy to allow people out if they do not want to participate. Unfortunately, that ends up with the question of those who don't want to participate won't fund it, but they will receive the benefit of whatever actions and services might come out of it down the road in terms of overall well protection. But that's another issue we don't need to go back to. But yes, they're stuck now based on the map we approved, but they can in the future ask to come out.
Okay.
But the maximum assessment's $10 an acre, so we're not talking about a huge amount.
Well, if you have
I have a
1,000
comment.
acres, it is, or 400 acres.
I have a comment if I may. So once it's formed and there's a board and people can go in and ask, they can also be denied at that point. too.
That's true.
Okay.
Right. They will be just like any other special district that you're aware of. They operate independently and they get to make those decisions. People
Although
then,
remember,
just to be clear though, if I can follow up, if the board does not agree, they can still petition us directly to remove themselves from the district. So there is always that option as well. So they're not just out. They have two ways: go to the district board, ask. If the district board does not want to support it, they can still petition directly to LAFCO to be
Well, and
removed.
we need to remind everybody that once that board is formed, it has to come back to LAFCO because we're going to restructure the districts.
Right.
So there's still a lot of oversight as far as what happens and how it happens.
And on that point, just serving as an alternate, I've never seen any of the notices. I've never seen any of the paperwork that goes to the people. I would like to be informed of that. I think this was a big deal, and I think that that would have been appropriate to send to this board. I don't know if the board got it. I know I didn't get anything, just so that I know what's happening, and particularly in my district.
We just, for clarification, organizationally, we have never, and I'm not saying it's a bad idea or good idea, but we have never notified the agency of, particularly of public notices that go out, other than when we write the staff reports. And I think you'll find around all the public agencies in the county and around the state that generally the public member or the political members of the body don't receive the notices unless they by chance happen to be a landowner within the area that's affected. I appreciate that. And I'm more than happy to send that. If the commission says, send all public notices to us as well, I'd be happy to do that. But we didn't, but they have been on our website, and they've been posted on our website for the last month.
Well, I just am bringing it up because I did request this of the planning commission. And so whenever anything is happening in my district, I get that notice, and it's very good to see what the people see, because then when I get the phone calls about it, I know what they received. Otherwise, I'm not sure what they're talking about. That was my point.
I will commit to you, Ms. Lucero, moving forward, as a supervisor, just as an individual supervisor, I will make sure you get notices that affect your district.
That would be great. Thank you.
All right, anything else on this item? I don't see any huge groundswell of public interest on items not on the agenda, so I'll move through that and go on to 6.1, the executive officer's report.
Okay, I'll try to go through this quickly. We already covered some of this. Obviously, we welcome Crystal. She's actively running all these various screens. The recruiting process, I think, was illustrative of the tight employment market. We're really thrilled that we were able to find a person who had the skill set that would definitely benefit LAFCO moving forward. But this is a tough market, and I'm glad we were able to successfully get through this process. We have a contractual services agreement with the county, and this is a document we entered into when we went independent in 2007-8 from the county. Mr. Leverins was there then. He signed the agreement. What it basically said was, when we went independent from the county, that certain services the county was going to continue to provide for us. They were mostly organizational, administrative services, stuff like HR, the accounting office, treasury, assessor. We have relationships with all of them. We pay each of them a certain amount through this agreement every year to offset our costs. They have asked for the first time since this agreement has been in existence since 2008, they have asked to revise the agreement and had notified us that they would like to reopen it, and that they expect that there will be additional charges to treasurer services, communications, which are very minor, in a few $100s, and those are already built into our budget that you approved earlier. And then there's human resources, which is sort of I don't want to get into the weeds here, but the county went to a new program called Workday that basically everything is done in Workday, and I'm sure the supervisors have heard more than they want to know about Workday. But it's complicated. It's taking some time. It's a lot more intensive in terms of upfront getting to understand it. So we think our human resources costs will probably increase. We don't know what they will be yet. We are meeting with them in another week to talk about the costs. I will come back to the commission if we need, in fact, change that agreement. But it's looking like right now that we will need to increase human resources costs probably twice to that of what we currently pay, which is about $13,000 a year. This isn't an item about the item right now. I just wanted to give you a heads up. This is what's happening. I will continue to reach out, and as soon as we have more information, this will then be an agendized item for action at some point, either with respect to maybe an alteration to the budget if that's required, which I don't think it will be, or an alteration to the agreement, which is likely. We are also developing an agreement, as you based on conversation last month, that with the city of Oroville to use this council chambers as our new permanent facility And so assuming nobody tells me that they suddenly had a change of heart, that's what we're moving forward with.
Is there a cost involved with using these chambers?
No, there has not been. A City of Orville has not requested us to compensate them for anything. They've been very magnanimous about using this facility. In fact, Mr. Groen has told me that they feel it's underutilized, so they're glad that people are using it.
So historically, you have bylaws that
We have a
state specifically where we meet regularly?
correct. And so we're going to have to change that, obviously, and then create this as our new permanent location. And what that matters for, Mr. McGreen, is where we post notices. That's
Physically,
why
I
it's
don't think
important.
Well, I
we
realize
need the
that. I realize that.
Supervisor
But
chambers anymore.
above and beyond
Yeah,
that,
we
though,
took down all
are the
Cut it all
bylaws,
down now.
are the bylaws silent in,
Gentlemen,
are the bylaws silent in the event we opt to, with staff's concurrence, the commission wants to have a special meeting or something somewhere else in the county for some
we can
reason?
always do that. That's
Okay.
never off the table.
Okay,
But
good.
this is for purposes of identifying where our
Right.
quote unquote official
Right.
meeting location is. And I can actually, when we come back with that change, we can actually put language in and indicates on a case by case basis, we may alter that and that'll be presented on the website. So if you go to our website right now, for instance, there's a section on the website that clearly tells everybody that we are no longer at Butte County Supervisors, we're here. That will be incorporated into our bylaws as well. The next item up is under the project general. I prepared some comments on the Tuscan Ridge plan development. This is a development that's halfway up the Skyway between Paradise and Chico. It's a county project. It's in the process right now of going through review. So the comments that I have provided are for that purpose, for them to better understand what our concerns might be with the project and to address those in future environmental document as they go forward. So that's where we are right now. They held a scoping meeting and this was a response. I'm happy to answer any questions about that. I don't necessarily need to go through it unless you have interest, any particular questions.
Steve, do you know whether or not when the notice of prep was sent out by the county on behalf of this project back in February, I know you responded on behalf of LAFCO. Do you know whether or not all the potential service entities that could be affected by this project were properly notified of this notice of preparation for
I cannot
EIR?
tell you that now.
This would be
For
a
instance,
valid-
Paradise Park and Rec.
Yeah, Park and Rec. I don't recall that, but doesn't mean it
I would
hasn't.
not be surprised if you did not get an official notice, to
Okay.
be honest with you.
How about the town of Paradise? Do you know?
I don't know if they did or not, but with the direction it's going, with PID coming in, everybody coming in, is this now going to become something that Paradise is going to have to incorporate for services and stuff?
So I really want to
Not
hesitate.
that I'm concerned
talking-
about that or anything, but yeah.
You can see from our comments that we have a lot of questions about how this is going to proceed. And I don't want to prejudice the project in any way by discussing it today, because that's really not appropriate. But I will tell you that, yes, Mr. Bowen, we are aware that this has impacts on the town of Paradise for a variety of reasons. This affects PID for a variety of reasons. It affects Paradise Park and Rec for a right. So I think Mr. McGreen's comment is excellent. And to that point, I'm happy to forward all of this to those affected agencies if you would like me to, just to make sure
If
that
the commission
everybody's.
concurs, I think it's valid.
I have
frankly.
CC'd this to Mr. Phillips.
Okay.
So I know he has seen it, but I will be happy to get it to everybody.
I appreciate that because
I do have a question on it too.
Yes, ma'am.
I was just wondering, with the new WUI interface, how does this project relate to that? Is that any part of LAFCO's? Does LAFCO have any part of that?
So when we look at, the answer generally is no, but here's where it can be a process. When we look at any potential application that comes in for a project that, for instance, the WUI is an issue, wildland urban interface for those out there on the web. That is a factor we must consider.
absolutely.
It is not a standalone single policy issue. It's one of many things we must consider. So we absolutely will. And in our comments, you might have noticed we made some comments about fire protection services provided to that area and the fact that it's been burned over multiple times.
Right, yeah.
That's not to say it ever will again, but it's possible. So we really hope that my effort in writing this letter was, we're hoping that CAL FIRE will provide some meaningful assistance to the county in reviewing this as it respects to wildland fires. Unfortunately, in the years past, especially coming back from my planning hat and Mr. Betts's planning hat from when we were on the planning department, the county years ago, CAL FIRE was often very reluctant to weigh in on development projects with respect to you shouldn't do this, or you should do this, or this is going to be, they would just basically say, we will have to adapt to dealing with it. I hope that they provide more insight this time around to both the planning commission and ultimately to the board of supervisors when when this ends up on your table, because it's a very real issue.
Yeah, and then one other question is about water. I know that you're involved somehow, or LAFCO is involved somehow in assessing water services, but do you get into water availability or not?
It's a factor. Once again, we don't control that or push it, but it's one of the many factors that we have to look at. When I say factors, there are, just real quick, Government Code Cortese Knox, which is the LAFCO law 56668, outlines these factors that we have to look at. And there are 16 of these various factors. All your staff reports are generally built on those 16 factors, and we add a response. So yes, this is one of water availability will be one of those factors. We do know that in this case, it seems like right now from the wells that are on site that they probably have adequate water, and probably adequate water moving forward because the well is very deep. But nonetheless, that's going to have to get fleshed out in the environmental impact report, as well as the project proposal. Once it gets in front of the planning commission, then eventually in front of the board, that'll be better explained, I hope, to you.
And then just the final question was, did you find the county's reports sufficient or not?
I will say that it's been, this particular project has been a bit of a struggle to get information.
Because I'm struggling to get information. So I just wondered if you guys got any more than I
Well,
did.
I'll honestly tell you is that I learned more from talking to the consultants who were hired to prepare the project than I have learned from county planning staff. And that's disappointing, but nonetheless, I'm not here to indict anybody for there just hasn't been a lot of information available regularly, either out there in the public or even on Track It. It's been difficult to find information.
Yeah.
For us, at least.
No, I've had the same experience. So I just wondered if you had a different line of, like you had the
Different
inside
access?
track. Yeah.
No backdoor access. I'm sorry.
Okay. All right.
So that's the Tuscan Ridge project. Paradise Option Study is continually moving forward. There was supposed to be a public outreach meeting that was scheduled for earlier in the month, and they canceled that because there was some last minute changes they wanted to make based on some feedback they had gotten from PID. So right now, as it stands, this project has still not yet been in a quote unquote public forum, but they are going to reschedule that public meeting. It's just not been picked. That date has not been picked yet. We have been involved. We have continued to provide comments, but the general public, as it were, have not really weighed in yet on this. I know the town council has, but the public has not had that opportunity. You look like you have a question, Mr. Kimball. Go ahead.
No, this is completely off topic. So
Okay. Anyhow, so we'll just continually track that project for you. And as things develop, you will certainly be the first to know as we move forward. You want to ask your question or just generically, or should I continue with the?
continue.
Okay.
You're done.
I won't bring up the El Medeo part. It's more of the same. You've just heard more of the same. I will tell you that we've had very positive conversations with Mr. Legrone. We are very hopeful that the city will take the initiative on this, especially now that we have acted today on the contract. So I'll leave it at that. The sewer line to the town of Paradise to the city of Chico is continuing. The EIR is being prepared. They did release a draft of the agreement between the town and the city council, town council, city council. There's operating procedures that they'll go about doing. That's more of an internal document that guides how the town and the city will work together, which is a component of the overall project. And they are now just completed that. And that is now going to be, it is currently out for public review. I don't know if you have anything you want to add to that, Mr. Bolin, but
No,
okay, that's fine.
I can't.
No worries. Well, as the same with the other project, we will continue to track it and put stuff in front of you every month to let you know where it's at. And if we have something to say, we will certainly say it as the commission has directed. Miss
Yeah, I
Sarah.
just have a question on that. So I was a little surprised to see 184 million as the cost when they have quoted things like as high as 320 million. And now it's 184 million. And with inflation and everything and all of the supply chain issues, I don't see how it went down.
I I understand what you're saying. The number I used was the number that was presented in the information they provided to the public on the website.
Okay.
I recognize you have seen different numbers. I have seen different numbers.
Yeah. I just was shocked to see that number. Okay.
That's all I really have to add. I don't think I want to talk about any of the other projects right now. There's nothing that's really pressing. I've already talked to you about the Cal LAFCO, hired a new Cal LAFCO executive director. Her name's Renee LaRoche. Hopefully I will have her, invite her up here to visit with all of you one day soon. Pamela Miller has officially retired from that position. Bill and I are still heavily involved, him as the secretary and I as the executive officer for the state association. Legislation, I just want to talk on one bill, which is SB 938. This is just super huge for us at LAFCO. It's one of the biggest accomplishments Cal LAFCO has ever done. This comes back to the question about El Medeo and what can LAFCO do. So what we've asked for deals with protest provisions. I know you've seen this. I put stuff in the staff report. Just this past week, there was the state held a Senate Finance Committee meeting on this. So it was the Senate Finance Committee. That was sort of the first big hurdle in the state legislative process. It unanimously passed out of that committee. And it now go to the floor for a vote. And the fact that it was unanimous tells you a lot about the effort we put in the lobbying, but also the value of the bill, which is essentially making this protest stuff more understandable. It's all over the code. It's now going to get consolidated into one section. But the more important part of this is it's the part about changing the protest thresholds for LAFCO initiated actions. So this comes back to your question, Mr. Kimmelshoe. LAFCO can do it, but right now the protest threshold is 25%, meaning if 25% of those people protest, it goes to an election. But LAFCO is held to a much lower standard. If we initiate, it's a 10% threshold to trigger an election, which in a very small district is an absurd few number of people who can change the outcome of everything. Just a few very emotional, very motivated people can make a difference on these small numbers. This bill changes that to 25% for LAFCO. And a few guardrails are put in so that we don't go rogue, if you will. But the reality is this bill is moving forward. So if all goes as we hope, this will be signed into law sometime over the summer. And so if we have not yet resolved or found another option for El Medeo, moving forward with this bill in place, if approved, then we could initiate it and be subject to the same standards.
Question about whether we have the authority and power to do it. We do, it just is a different threshold.
Right.
So this was, this was just a ton of work. You don't all know what I do every day, but I spent a lot of time over the last 3 years working with Cal LAFCO to get this through. And if any of you have ever been involved in the legislative process, it is just a constant grind.
Oh, yeah.
But we got there, and CSDA, the California Special District Association, finally came on board, and they are also in support of this bill.
That's encouraging.
That in itself was its own monumental.
That's big. I know that as a special district rep, that's huge. And thank goodness for Hertzberg.
Yes, and Mr. Hertzberg's name on a bill very, very, very much helps.
Yeah.
That's all I have to add. If there are any questions for me specifically.
Yeah, it actually kind of dovetails into what you're talking about of disillusionment of special districts. Are there any other special districts in Butte County that should be dissolved?
Trying to get me in trouble, Tom.
I mean, I know there are, how many special districts? There's several, right?
41.
41. Okay. I'm just wondering, are there other special districts that are assessing people that are not doing anything?
Well, we prepared of these MSRs, and we know there are districts that could be doing better. And there are certainly districts, and they're in your district for your supervisorial district, dealing with drainage districts, for instance. There is a lot of overlap. We did an MSR a few years back. It was a very thorough MSR. It pointed out that there were a lot of overlaps between drainage districts, and they should not occur. Some folks are being double taxed. In other cases, just no services being provided. It's like drainage district 1 and 200 and 100. And, they all just stacked up over the years. We want to unpack that. But I think we'll have their support when we start to doing it. We were working with Mr. Trimble with Western Canal, who, as you know, has got his hands in a little bit of everything, but he was prepared to move forward with asking for some of these new consolidations to occur. Then pandemic hit and sort of everything went to hell. And he couldn't get his people together as often as he'd like. So the answer to your question is there are definitely districts that are at that level of needing to be seriously considered for either a consolidation with another district or perhaps to be altogether dissolved. But the two that were very obvious, we took care of one of them, which was the Orville Mosquito Abatement District, by dissolving it and moving that territory into Butte County Mosquito Abatement. That still leaves the Durham Mosquito Abatement District, which I'll honestly tell you should be consolidated into Butte County as well. But as you very well know, Durham is a very strong community and they very much can protect their entities. And they decided, as Mr. Lambert, your predecessor, told me many times, once they decide what they want to do, you're not going to convince them otherwise. And I think in Durham, if it's their choice, at least they now have an informed choice. They can read the documents and see what the level of service is between the two different agencies. And if they want to pay more for less service, in a sense, that's their prerogative, I guess. But there's a district we might look at. So does that answer your question?
It does. I would just encourage you to continue to look at these. I know you're very busy and have a lot of other things on your plate, but I think if
Well,
they're
we're required under the municipal service review to do that on a fairly comprehensive
good,
basis.
perfect.
So if you have somebody in mind, let me know.
Related question, are there any county service areas that, based on MSRs, necessitate being dissolved?
There are, we have dissolved a few, as you
Mhm.
might remember.
Right.
There are still a few out there that
Okay.
need to be addressed, that I believe, the county is interested in doing. But again, it's a workload issue. It's hard we wrote the document, we put it all out there. It's kind of up to the county staff now to decide if they want to move forward with any of those changes. Some of them, it's not so much they need to be dissolved, is that the services they were intended to provide are not at the level they should be. They still do some things, but there's definitely attention. And I think our document, to be honest with you, and I'll give credit, Mr. Betts actually wrote that document, but the county uses it extensively. I have talked to a number of people and they said, oh, we pull that down. It's the Bible for us on county service areas. And so I know that they're aware of it and there are some that they need to address. I just don't know if they have the manpower right now to, they're not the kind that, it's not like the Almadeo where literally they're collecting money and doing nothing. So these are districts that probably need attention, but they're not as to the level of just simply doing nothing and collecting money.
Yeah, I would bring up, I think it's CSA 172, which is the only district that has something, I'm trying to remember, I think charged with drainage.
It's drainage, lighting, and they run the pumps.
Right. But they're the only district that has another overlay. And I know that when it flooded in North Chico, the county secured funding out of their funds, which was a big deal to the CSA. And I'm just curious why that particular CSA only has, charge of, I think it's 3 different things: lighting, fire, drainage, maybe.
Drainage.
Yeah. And so they've brought that up to me several times, multiple times. And I just wondered, and I think you've even met with some of those representatives.
Yeah.
I'm just letting you know, they're not going away.
Well, and I appreciate that. And there's no question. And you and I've talked about this, and I have shared with the county the map we have prepared showing all those, but there's definitely a need for the county to evaluate the CSAs in the North Chico area comprehensively. And
Yes.
probably look at some reorganization of how they're operating. Doing it on a subdivision by subdivision basis when you're talking about drainage, which is regional, really begs the question of, is there better to just dissolve some of these agencies or remove those powers and put that power into, say, CSA 87,
Right.
which is kind of just a shell right now.
It is.
And
Yeah.
it doesn't do anything, but it certainly it was intended when formed to deal with planning and long-term planning in the North Chico area. And that just simply has seemingly dropped off the table.
Well, we did authorize a master drainage plan.
Right.
So, I mean, I'm hoping that would include CSA 87 as a possible solution to North Chico.
I would,
Can't believe the county of Butte's not doing things they're supposed to do.
No comment.
encourage both the supervisors, if you feel like there's meetings that are occurring dealing with these issues, by all means, if you want me to be there, I'm not going to say they'll want me to be there necessarily, but I can also speak truth to how those things came to be.
I think it's going to be important because if they're going to put this master drainage plan together, which we just approved, LAFCO needs to be involved because we've got all kinds of CSAs out there.
No, I have not gotten anything about that particular plan at all into our office, but if you guys want to share that with me, I'm happy to participate.
It's being funded out of ARPA funds, and I believe it was 800,000.
Mhm.
But as long as we're talking about general policy, I've certainly encouraged the staff, the LAFCO staff, for many, many years to continue to do what they can. I, with my warped sense of humor, call it herding butterflies. But for the most part, it just is important for the LAFCO staff to be involved in a lot of these things, to let some of these entities know that they're not doing all the things they need to do.
So as a relatively new member of this commission, what jurisdiction does LAFCO have over county CSAs?
Well, we have the same jurisdiction over them as we have over every other special district. They
Sure.
are special districts by law. We control their boundaries. We do an MSR and an SOI form every year. And if need be, we can reorganize them and we can up to and including
If
dissolve
we
them.
found a municipal service district was not functional or not functioning the way it should, we would criticize it, give it an opportunity to clean its act up. And then we could technically take efforts to shut it down or change it or merge it into something that is functional.
So, but when you said we had 41 special district, that did
That
not
does not include
include.
That does not include the
right?
CSAs. no.
CSAs are
Yeah.
like 270 CSAs, isn't it 270?
62.
Oh, 62.
Total number is higher, but a lot of those have been dissolved over the years.
Okay,
So,
all right.
but there are 62 active county service areas and 41 special districts. Technically, altogether, they're all special districts, but we treat county service areas slightly different because most of them end up being isolated on subdivisions rather than dealing with large regional issues.
How many are in North Chico?
20.
I think it has the
Every
highest number
subdivision
of,
has one,
right,
probably,
right.
yeah.
Well, and the reason it gets that way, and I'm sorry, Mr. Leverance, to go off on a tangent a little bit, but the reason that I don't often get to do that. The reason that occurred is that they happen one-off as subdivisions come forward, and that has happened for as long as I've been involved with the county, at 27 years. This is how county service areas have been used, rather than looking at a problem and saying, what's the collective solution for the problem, rather than what does this individual subdivision can do on its own territory to help the 20 homes built there. And that's the question that really, I'm sure, troubles you.
Yeah, well, and it's becoming more of an issue as, you know, we do the 24 homes here and 36 homes here. And what is the cumulative? Nobody's looked at the cumulative effect of not having a master drainage plan and whether or not it works. And we know for a fact it doesn't work because when it floods, it floods.
And candidly, it's in the county's best interest to look at larger, more comprehensive CSAs. They don't have to file as many auditors reports on every single entity, which happens now. So
That's a
you're
great
putting up,
idea.
there's an administrative side that has nothing to do with services. It
Yeah.
also is a burden on the county. But if you're looking at trying to come up with a regional approach, it's much easier to say, I have 5,000 parcels from which to spread the cost of this around on collectively. In theory, the county could remove all drainage services from all the independent, each into CSA and roll it into one larger drainage service, which would probably bring down the cost per parcel
Right.
for every single person. And have a comprehensive solution that the county can move forward, but not have to work through 20 separate single CSAs to deal with it.
Do you have to though have, if we have 61 CSAs, we have 20 out there, we'd have to have 20 elections.
That's what would have to happen for parcel assessment to be increased. Your 218 would involve all of those individual parcels.
Or if we wanted them all to move into 87,
Right.
either way, it's 20 elections.
There's at least, I don't know, there's more to that than
Okay.
it's too much to describe right
All
now.
Okay,
But
one
you're
more-
right.
One
Generally,
more quick question, and I promise I won't ask any more today. And I know that I apologize for this meeting going on longer than it should, but do CSAs typically go away when they are annexed into a city?
if the entirety of the CSA's parcel count is annexed, it gets dissolved.
Okay.
Just like we did today with
Yes.
36.
That's why I asked. Thank you.
Okay, if there's nothing else, we are adjourned.
Thank you.